Here is chapter 23, section 4, which is the legacy of World War I. What is legacy? Do we have any idea what that means? Yeah.
Isn't that like your reputation?
It's what you leave behind, right? It's, if I talk about somebody's legacy, it's what you're remembered for. So it's after your life or after an event, kind of what happens, okay? So here's the legacy of World War I. What we have up here is the cost of World War I. This is battlefield deaths in World War I. Everybody down here at the bottom are the Central Powers. Germany lost 1.7 million people in World War I. Austria-Hungary, 1.2. Ottoman Empire, 325,000. You go up here on the Allied side, 1.7 for Russia, 1.3 for France, 900,000 for British. Then you see a very small little sliver over here, U.S., 107. Why are we so low?
We were the last of the war.
We got in it late and stuff like that. Mr. Ritchie, I already handed these out next by this class. I just remembered that, sorry. So, we get involved in the war very late, okay? So, we don't have a lot of casualties. Now, here's the other thing you gotta understand. You can't just talk dead, right? You gotta look at people that are wounded. 20 million soldiers died, or were wounded, in battle. You're like, well, what is that? Who cares? In France, 7 out of every 10, young men were either killed or wounded in World War I. Alright? United States, we lost 200,000 were wounded. Now, you're like, what difference does that make? Those same men that were killed or wounded in World War I, all were between the ages of what?
14 and 20.
Yeah, you're probably talking anywhere from 16 on the low end to maybe, 35 on the high end. Is that a major part of your workforce?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this going to have economic impacts after the war if you kill off or injure 70% of your workforce in that age group? Sure. All right. What else did it cost? The economic cost of World War I. The Allies spent $145 billion on the war. Now, how does a country spend money on a war? Weapons, tanks, food, clothing, the cost of shipping troops from here to there, all that stuff. Central Powers, $63 billion. All right. A lot of European countries actually went into debt to pay for the war. Now you're like, well, how does the country go into debt? I think we talked about this yesterday with Liberty bonds, right? How many of you guys got a savings bond at home? You got maybe with your grandparents when you were born? You guys understand who owes you money? The federal government. Okay? So that's an example of that. Alright? Now, here's another thing that was going on at the same time in the war. So we had all these people that were dying in the war. We also had a flu epidemic. Alright? And when we think of the flu, we think of throwing up and being sick for a couple of days. People died because of the flu. 30 million people worldwide. In the United States, we had 800,000 people die of the flu from 1918 to 1919. And you might be like, well, I don't even know how many that is. So you know how many people live in Milwaukee?
356,000.
It's, well, around 400,000. I mean, that was a pretty good guess. Alright, it's around 400,000. So, it's kind of like if we had Milwaukee twice, just wiped out. Okay? Now, why did it spread so quickly? We had a lot of people that were close together in army barracks and things like that. People were getting it overseas and coming back to the United States and stuff like that. So that was all going on. Alright, so now let's get a little bit into the aftermath of the war. So, here's the deal. The war is over. How do you determine how you're going to prevent this from happening again? Alright? One of the big issues is they wanted to somehow create a balance of power in Europe. And you had, the guy that proposed this was President Wilson, Woodrow Wilson. And he proposed something called the League of Nations. The League of Nations was an international organization that was set up to kind of get rid of conflict. Okay? Does anybody have any clue what this is very similar to today? This does not exist today, by the way. Yeah?
United Nations?
United Nations. And people always ask, well, did the League of Nations become the United Nations? No. The League of Nations never existed. It was proposed, all right? A lot of people were against it. One of the big opponents of it was a guy by the name of Senator Henry Cabot Lodge. He was a senator that spoke out against it, all right? Now, here's what you got to understand. Wilson laid out what he called the 14 points. And I'm not going to stand up here and bore you with all 14 points. We are going to go over just a select few. All right? If you remember the causes of World War I, which would be a good review right now anyways. What are the causes of World War I?
Ooh.
There was an M. What's the M? Yeah. Militarism. What else?
Imperialism.
Imperialism.
Assassination.
Okay, assassination was the spark. Alliances. Nationalism. All right? So, smaller military forces worldwide. Here's the problem. If a country has a military built up, are they more likely to use it?
Probably.
Yeah. You don't buy. That's like, you don't buy something to have it sit around, right? So he thought that you gotta have smaller militaries. He wanted to end secret alliances. Okay, now remember, what's an alliance? Yeah, you're kind of friends. Well, I shouldn't say that. You may not necessarily be friends, but you agree that you will do what?
If you help me, I'll help you.
Yeah. Don't kid yourself to think that because two people are allies, they like each other per se. Alright, I'll give you an example. Actually, you guys give me an example. Give me an example of a country that we were heavily aligned with in World War II, who becomes our enemy after World War II. Yeah, Mr. Kendall.
The Ruskies were.
Yeah, okay. Who can help them out? You're on the right track. Yeah. Russia, right? During World War II, we were allies with Joseph Stalin and the Soviet Union. After World War II, we're about as far apart as we can get, right?
Cold War between us and Russia?
Yes, with the communism and democracy. We'll get to that. Okay? So, we want to end secret alliances. He also proposed that you got to have freedom of the seas. You got to be able to, you can't just blow up ships all over the Atlantic Ocean. Okay? He also believed breaking up an empire. Does anybody have any idea what an empire is? Yeah.
Something that try to take on another country and take over them, and it just keep getting worse.
Yeah, basically an empire is, let's see here, here's what, I keep trying to use blue, it'll work here. Here's my country, and what do?
You take over.
I just try to expand that empire, right? I'm taking over, this country, that country, and, that's what Germany was trying to do, all right? And we're going to talk about, does this really work, all right? The last one is what they call the self-determination, which was this idea, off your questions, maybe you guys can answer this for me. What is self-determination? What should people be able to do?
Take their own choices. Decide themselves.
Decide for themselves about what, though?
If they want to go to war.
Nope.
Who they want for leaders, isn't it?
Basically, self-determination is that they can decide what type of country they want to live under. If you look at the technical book definition here of self-determination, I can't find it off the top of my head. Self-determination, the right of people to choose their own political status. All right, so they should get to choose what type of government they want to live under. All right. Now, where do they meet on all this stuff? They meet on all this stuff at the Treaty of Versailles. You will learn a lot about the Palace of Versailles in world history. Palace of Versailles is in which country? Do we have a clue? Versailles, might kind of, you guys in French class?
France.
No, yeah, it's in France. Okay? Treaty of Versailles was at the palace that was built by King Louis. Alright? Now here's the problem. We have to kind of come up with how should we punish the countries that were the aggressors. Now here's the deal. You've got a fine line between holding somebody accountable and going overboard. Okay? It's kind of like you guys, if you do something at home. Right? Let's say you come in 10 minutes late on curfew. Big deal?
No.
No, probably not. Okay? What happens if your parents lower the hammer and just go nuts and give you just a huge punishment for what you feel is not a huge crime.
What's wrong with that?
Alright, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Okay? For you, maybe not. But for some people, what might it cause them to do?
Do
Rebel.
it the next time.
To maybe, get down the road, maybe rebel more. Alright? Now, in the case of Germany, we decided that Germany has full responsibility for the war. Okay? Well, here's the thing. If Germany's the full aggressor in the war, is that accurate?
No.
Austria,
No, they had allies, right? So we tell Germany that they need to accept 100% fault for the war. We call that the war guilt clause. We also tell Germany we're going to take away its colonies. We're going to tell Germany they have to get rid of their military. We're going to tell Germany they have to pay $33 billion in reparations, which is basically money they have to pay back to the Allies for the cost of the war. And we divided up Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Now you think about this. Germany says, whoa, 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 whoa. This is kind of harsh. Okay? And if you think about this, do you think the fact that we overpunished them in World War I, do you think that led them to maybe be aggressive in World War II? Sure. Hitler points directly at this and says, we are going to avenge the Treaty of Versailles. That was, Germany was held to a much higher level of punishment than anybody else. All right? Now, the problem is, the Treaty of Versailles never gets ratified by the Congress, by the U.S. Congress. Never goes into effect. The League of Nations never happens, long story short and stuff like that. But one thing I want you guys to understand is, here's a map of post-World War I Europe. All these countries over here, did they even exist prior to World War I?
No.
No. We take the German Empire, we do what with it?
Split it up.
Split it up. We allow these countries to determine, where do they want to live and stuff like that. All right? So what countries do you get new? You get everything from Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Czechoslovakia. What happens to Hungary? Austria-Hungary. Gets split, right? We create Poland, Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria. All these countries cease to exist prior to World War I. Now we know that did this peace last? No. This was in 1919. All right? We know by the mid-1930s who comes to power in Germany?
Hitler.
Hitler. Okay? Who comes to power in Italy?
the Pope.
Nope.
Hitler?
Mussolini. We'll talk about these guys. And then we have another imperial power that's over in the Pacific. Who's over in the Pacific? Japan. So we know that this treaty doesn't last. Alright? So, anyways. Alright? Okay, we're good. So you can hit the red button now.